Isaiah Caldwell's fingers tightened around the small black phone. His stomach clenched as he scrolled through message after message, each one driving the knife deeper. The burner phone had fallen from Lena's coat pocket when he'd hung it in the closet, a simple accident revealing a year of deception. "Hey handsome, can't wait to see you tonight. Miss your hands on me. Zay thinks I'm my sister's again. Idiot." Isaiah set the phone down on the kitchen counter and took a deep breath. His hand trembled slightly, the only outward sign of the hurricane raging inside him. 15 years of marriage. 2 beautiful children. All of it now tainted that he heard the garage door open. Lena was home. Isaiah slipped the phone into his pocket and poured himself a glass of water, leaning against the counter with forced casualness as his wife entered the kitchen. "You're home early," Lena said, setting her purse down. Her dark hair was styled perfectly. Her makeup still flawless despite the supposed day with her sister she claimed to have. "Meeting got cancelled," Isaiah replied, his voice steady despite the acid burning his throat. He studied her face to face. He'd woken up to for 15 years, searching for any sign of the person he thought he knew. Lena moved to the refrigerator. Her back to him. "The kid's still at school?" "Yep. Ellie has dance class. Remember Rudy's at math club? Mrs. Johnson is bringing them home." Right? She nodded, distracted, checking her watch. Isaiah took a slow sip of water. "Got plans tonight. Just enter with Jessica. Girls' night." The lie rolled off her tongue effortlessly, making Isaiah wonder how many times she'd done this before he reached into his pocket and set the burner phone on the counter with a soft click. "You dropped this." Lena froze, her shoulders tensing before she slowly turned for a split second. Panic flashed across her face before her expression hardened. "You went through my phone?" she asked, her voice ice cold. "Didn't have to go far. Idiot, right? That's what you called me." Isaiah's voice remained calm, controlled. Lena's eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation. Then surprisingly, she laughed, a short, bitter sound that seemed to drain whatever warmth remained in the room. "Well, this saves me the trouble," she said, crossing her arms. "Yes, I've been seeing someone for almost a year now." "Harlan Bishop," Isaiah said, surprise flickered across her face. "You've been spying on me." "I read the messages, Lena. You weren't exactly subtle." He tapped the phone. "He sounds wealthy, important. He is everything you're not." Lena's words were deliberately cruel. "He can give me the life I deserve." Isaiah nodded slowly, pushing down the urge to react with anger. "And the kids, what about them? They'll adjust. Children always do." She leaned against the opposite counter, suddenly looking impatient, as if this conversation was keeping her from something more important. "I'm moving on, Zay. You have no power over me anymore. Just like that. 15 years, 2 kids, and you're walking away without a second thought." Lena smiled. And there was something new in it, something calculating that Isaiah had never seen before. Or perhaps he just never noticed it. "Here's how this is going to work," she said. "I'm marrying Harlan next month. It's all arranged. You're going to be reasonable about this divorce. You're going to attend my wedding and show everyone what good friends we still are." Isaiah stared at her in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious." Her voice hardened. "Because if you try to make this difficult or embarrassing for me, I'll take the kids full custody. You'll be lucky if you see them on holidays." "You wouldn't try me." Lena pushed off on the counter. "Harlan has connections everywhere. Judges, lawyers, police. One word from him and your visitation rights will disappear." Isaiah felt cold fury spreading through his veins, but his face remained impassive. He'd always been good at hiding his emotions, a skill that had served him well in business negotiations. Now it would serve a different purpose. "So that's the deal. I play the good ex-husband or lose my children." "Exactly." Lena picked up her purse. "I'm staying at Harlan's tonight. I'll be back tomorrow to pack some things." She headed toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and say the prenup we signed. Harlan's lawyers found 3 different ways around it. Don't bother fighting it." She walked out, leaving Isaiah alone in the kitchen that suddenly felt foreign to him. He looked around at the home he had built, the photographs of family vacations, the children's artwork magnetized to the refrigerator. The life he had believed in for so long had been an illusion. Isaiah poured the untouched water down the sink and set the glass down carefully. When he raised his head, his reflection in the window showed a calm, almost serene expression that belied the ice-cold resolve forming within him. "We'll see about that," he whispered to the empty room. The next morning, Isaiah was already at the kitchen table with his laptop when the sound of Ellie's footsteps came padding down the hallway. "Morning, Daddy," his 10-year-old daughter yawned. her dark curls a wild mess around her face. Morning sunshine. Isaiah closed his laptop and smiled. Pancakes. Yes, please. Ellie climbed onto a chair, watching as he mixed the batter. Where's Mom? Isaiah kept his movement smooth, his voice casual. She had to go out of town for a few days. Work stuff. But it's Saturday, Ellie said with a frown. I know, sweetheart, sometimes grown-ups have to work weekends too. He poured batter onto the griddle, forming a perfect circle. How about after breakfast we go to the park? Rudy can bring his new soccer ball. Ellie brightened immediately, the question about her mother forgotten. By the time Rudy stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes, pancakes were stacked high on plates. Mom gone again, the 8-year-old asked, more perceptive than his sister. Isaiah nodded for a few days. Rudy shrugged, reaching for the syrup. Whatever, can we get ice cream after the park? Don't push your luck, buddy. Isaiah said with a laugh that sounded almost natural. After breakfast, while the kids got dressed, Isaiah made a call. Cyrus, it's Isaiah. We need to talk. He kept his voice low, not on the phone. Can you meet today? 2 hours later, with the kids happily exhausted from the park and settled in front of a movie, Isaiah sat across from Cyrus Redford at a coffee shop 20 minutes from his neighborhood. Cyrus, a tall man with prematurely gray hair and sharp eyes, listened without interruption as Isaiah laid out the situation. She's threatening to take your kids. Cyrus finally asked, his expression darkening, using Harlan Bishop's connections to do it. Bishop, Cyrus frowned. I know him by reputation. Real estate developer, right? Lots of money, lots of friends in high places. That's him. And she wants you to attend their wedding. That's cold. Even for a divorce situation. Isaiah nodded. She wants to humiliate me, show everyone that she's in control. So what do you want to do? Isaiah took a sip of his coffee. I want to play the long game. Make her think she's winning while I gather what I need. To do what exactly? To make sure my children stay with me. Isaiah met his friend's eyes. And to make sure Lena and Harlan regret ever threatening me. Cyrus leaned back, studying him. You're talking about revenge. I'm talking about justice. Isaiah corrected. They're planning to destroy me. I'm just going to beat them to it. This isn't like you, Zay. Maybe it should have been. Isaiah's voice remained even. I've always played by the rules. Look where that got me. Cyrus nodded slowly. All right? As your attorney, I should advise you to take the high road. As your friend, I'll help however I can. I need everything you can find on Harlan Bishop. Business dealings, financial records, personal history. And I need to know exactly what Lena's legally entitled to in the divorce. That I can do. Cyrus pulled out a notepad. What else? I need to talk to Cara LeBlanc. Do you know if she's still in town? Cyrus raised an eyebrow. Lena's old friend? The one they had to falling out with. The same. Last I heard, she opened a boutique downtown. Why her? Because nobody knows Lena's secrets better than Cara does. Isaiah checked his watch. I should get back to the kids. Zay, Cyrus called as Isaiah stood up. Be careful. If Lena realizes what you're doing, she won't. Isaiah's smile was grim. As far as she's concerned, I'm a broken man who's going to do exactly what she wants to avoid losing his children. When he returned home, Isaiah found 3 missed calls from Lena and a text message stating she'd be by tomorrow to collect some of her things. He deleted it without responding and went to check on the kids. Ellie and Rudy were in the backyard, kicking a soccer ball back and forth. Isaiah stood at the window watching them. They were the only things that mattered now. Everything else, the hurt, the betrayal, the humiliation, all of it was secondary. That night, after tucking the children into bed, Isaiah sat at his home office desk. He opened a new document on his computer and titled it The Wedding Present. Then he began to type, methodically laying out his plan. Every detail, every contingency, every piece he would need to put into place. By midnight, he had the outline. By 2 a.m., he had his first moves planned. By dawn, he felt the first genuine sense of purpose he'd experienced since finding that phone. Lena arrived at 10 a.m., breezing into the house with a designer bag slung over her shoulder. The kids up, she asked, not bothering with a greeting. In the backyard, Isaiah replied. He was seated at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. Lena surveyed him with satisfaction. You look terrible. Rough night, he admitted, allowing his voice to crack slightly. Get used to it. She headed for the stairs. I need to grab some clothes. Lena, he called after her, infusing his tone with just the right amount of desperation. Do we really have to do this? What about counseling or? It's over, Zay. She didn't even turn around. Accepted. The wedding, he said. You really want me there? Now she looked back, a smirk playing on her lips. Absolutely. Front row looking happy for us. Isaiah hunched his shoulders, the picture of defeat. And if I do this, you'll be fair about custody. As long as you behave yourself, her voice was patronizing. Remember what I said about Harlan's connections? She disappeared upstairs, and Isaiah allowed himself a small, cold smile. Let her think she had broken him. It would make what came next all the sweeter. When the kids realized their mother was home, they rushed inside. Isaiah watched as Lena hugged them perfunctorily, making vague promises about seeing them soon. Neither child cried when she left an hour later with 2 suitcases of expensive clothes. They were used to her absences by now, a fact that should have bothered Isaiah earlier. That afternoon, Isaiah visited Carol LeBlanc's boutique downtown. The bell chimed softly as he entered, and Kara looked up from the display she was arranging. Her eyes widened in recognition. Isaiah, this is unexpected. Hello, Kara. He glanced around the elegant little shop. Nice place. Thanks. She approached cautiously. How are Ellie and Rudy? They're good. Growing too fast. He met her eyes. I need to talk to you about Lena. Kara's expression immediately closed off. I haven't spoken to her in over 2 years. I know. That's why I'm here? Understanding dawned on her face. She finally did it to you too, didn't she? Isaiah nodded once. Kara sighed, then walked to the door and flipped the sign to closed. Come to the back, she said. This isn't a quick conversation. 3 hours later, Isaiah left the boutique with a notebook full of information and a new ally in his plan. Kara, once Lena's closest confidant, had been unceremoniously cut from her life when she'd questioned Lena's increasingly materialistic values. Now, she was more than willing to share what she knew about Lena's past indiscretions, hidden accounts, and private habits. Most importantly, she knew things about Harlan Bishop that even Lena might not be aware of. He has a pattern, Kara had explained. My cousin dated him briefly. He's charming until he gets what he wants. Then he becomes controlling, even threatening. If Lena thinks she's upgrading, she's in for surprise. I'm not concerned about Lena's future happiness. Isaiah had replied coldly. Kara had given him a long look. You've changed. I'm adapting. She nodded slowly. What exactly are you planning, Isaiah? Justice, he'd answered simply. Are you in or out? I'm in, she'd said without hesitation. Just tell me what you need. The final piece came through Cyrus the following week. A name, Cliff Morrison, Harlan's former business partner, who had been forced out of their joint ventures under questionable circumstances. According to Cyrus's sources, Morrison had been gathering evidence of financial irregularities for years, waiting for the right moment to use it. Isaiah arranged a meeting at a discreet bar on the edge of town. Cliff Morrison was older than Isaiah had expected, with a weathered look of someone who had seen his share of battles. He listened skeptically as Isaiah outlined his situation. So your wife left you for Harlan, Morrison summarized, and now you want revenge. What makes you think I'd help you? Because you want the same thing I do, Isaiah replied calmly, to see Harlan Bishop get what's coming to him. Morrison took a long swig of his beer. I've been collecting dirt on Harlan for 3 years. Documentation of bribes, falsified permits, tax evasion. But I haven't moved on it because he's got too many friends in high places. One word from me, and I'd be the one in handcuffs. What if there was a very public way to expose him? A situation where those friends couldn't intervene without exposing themselves. Interest flickered in Morrison's eyes. I'm listening. A wedding, Isaiah said, with plenty witnesses, upstanding citizens who would be very uncomfortable being associated with criminal activities. A slow smile spread across Morrison's face. You're not what I expected, Mr. Caldwell. I'm full of surprises lately. Isaiah replied, raising his glass in a mock toast. The wedding invitation arrived 6 weeks later, an elaborate affair of heavy cream stock and gold embossing. Isaiah placed it on the mantel where Lena would see it during her next visit with the children. Those visits had become increasingly brief as the wedding approached. Lena would sweep in, shower the kids with expensive gifts, and disappear again, leaving Isaiah to deal with the emotional aftermath. Ellie had started having nightmares. Rudy had grown quieter, more watchful. Why doesn't Mom live with us anymore? Ellie asked one night as Isaiah tucked her in to sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. Mom and I have decided that we can't be married anymore. But we both love you and Rudy very much. Is it because of that man in the pictures? The one on Mom's phone? Isaiah stared at his daughter, momentarily caught off guard. What pictures, sweetheart? I saw them when I was playing games on Mom's phone. She got mad. Ellie's bottom lip trembled. She said I was being nosy. Isaiah smoothed her hair back from her forehead. It's complicated, Ellie, but I promise you everything's going to be okay. Are you sad, Daddy? No, he answered truthfully. I'm not sad anymore. The next day, Isaiah met with Cyrus in his office downtown. The walls were lined with legal books, the furniture dark and substantial. I've been reviewing your prenuptial agreement, Cyrus said, sliding a document across his desk. It's solid, despite what Lena claims. Her only possible challenge would be if she could prove coercion or that you hid assets. I didn't. Isaiah stated flatly, I know, but there's something else. Cyrus leaned forward. I've been monitoring Lena's financial movements, as you asked. She's been transferring money, significant amounts, in private accounts over the past year. Money from where? Joint accounts, mostly. But also, Cyrus hesitated. There are transfers from Harlan to offshore accounts that then filter to her. If I had to guess, I'd say they're setting up a nest egg that neither of you would have access to. Isaiah nodded slowly. She's planning to leave him too. It looks that way. The question is when, after she secures alimony, Isaiah concluded she'll stay just long enough to establish a lavish lifestyle that the courts would force him to maintain. Classic gold digger move, Cyrus agreed. But it gives us leverage. Harlan doesn't know her plan. And he won't take kindly to being used. Isaiah tapped his fingers on the armrest. How's the custody case coming? I've been documenting everything. Her diminishing time with the kids, the erratic visits, the inappropriate gifts. Cyrus pulled out another folder. I've also been speaking with Judge Reynolds privately. Isaiah raised an eyebrow. Can you do that? Normally, no. But Margaret Reynolds and I go way back. And she takes child welfare very seriously. When I explained this situation, Lena's threats, Harlan's attempts to use his influence, she agreed to review the case personally and set her own hearing date. Before the wedding, the day before, Cyrus's smile was tight. If all goes as planned, you'll have temporary full custody by the time you attend at circus. Isaiah felt the first real hope he'd experienced in months. And Lena won't know until it's too late. Exactly. But, Cyrus's expression grew serious. This judge expects you to be above reproach. Any hint that you're using the children as pawns in your own revenge scheme? I would never do that. Isaiah interrupted, his voice hard. Everything I'm doing is to protect them. I believe you. Make sure your actions reflect that. On his way home, Isaiah stopped by Kara's boutique. She was waiting with a thin file. It wasn't easy to get, she said, as they sat in her small office. But I still have friends who work at the country club. Harlan has quite the reputation there. Isaiah skimmed the page's statements from women who had been involved with Harlan. Accounts of his volatile temper, instances where money had changed hands to keep scandals quiet. This is good, he said, looking up at Kara. Very good. There's more, she said, handing him a USB drive. Security footage from a club. Harlan having a very heated argument with a young woman last year. She disappeared from town shortly after disappear. Moved suddenly, according to her friends. But no one's heard from her since. Isaiah pocketed the drive. Thank you, Kara. She studied him with concern. Isaiah, whatever you're planning, be careful. Harlan is dangerous when cornered. So am I. He replied quietly. I'm just better at hiding it. The final meeting with Cliff Morrison took place 3 days before the wedding. They met in a rented office space surrounded by boxes of documents and financial records. It's all here? Morrison said, gesturing to the evidence he'd compiled, tax fraud, bribery, contract manipulation, enough to send Harlan away for a decade at least. And you're sure it will stand up to scrutiny? Isaiah asked, examining a particularly damning spreadsheet. Absolutely. I was meticulous. Morrison scratched his graying beard. But I still don't understand your timing. Why not take this to the authorities now? Because timing is everything, Isaiah explained. If we move too soon, Harlan could use his connections to bury this. We need maximum exposure, minimum warning. The wedding, Morrison nodded. But how exactly are you planning to present all this? Isaiah smiled coldly. I've taken care of that part. All you need to do is be there with the documentation when I give a signal. And what about afterward? Harlan will come after both of us. After what happens at that wedding, Harlan won't be in a position to come after anyone. Isaiah closed a folder he'd been reviewing. You'll be protected. I give you my word. Morrison studied him for a long moment. You know, when we first met, I thought you were just another jilted husband looking for petty revenge. But this, he gestured to the elaborate setup. This is something else. This is justice, Isaiah said simply. The night before the wedding, Isaiah received a text from Cyrus. Judge ruled in your favor. Temporary full custody granted. Paperwork being delivered to you now. 20 minutes later, a courier arrived with sealed court documents. Isaiah signed for them, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. His children were legally protected now, regardless of what happened tomorrow. He checked on Ellie and Rudy, both sleeping peacefully in their beds. Tomorrow, they would stay with Mrs. Johnson, their trusted neighbor, while Isaiah attended the wedding that would change everything that I did in his study. He opened his laptop and reviewed his plan one final time. Every contingency was accounted for. Every player in position. The evidence was irrefutable. The timing perfect. Isaiah closed the computer and poured himself a rare glass of whiskey. Tomorrow, Lena and Harlan would learn that some people should never be underestimated, and some betrayal should never be forgiven. The Westbrook Hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a floral fantasy for the occasion. White roses and lilies cascaded from crystal vases, their scent heavy in the air. Soft lighting cast a golden glow over the assembled guests, who murmured appreciatively at the opulence surrounding them. Isaiah adjusted his tie as he entered, nodding politely to those who recognized him. The whispers followed him like a shadow. That's the ex-husband. Can you believe he actually came? Must be for the children's sake. He ignored them all, making his way to the front row on the bride's side, exactly where Lena had instructed him to sit. A visible reminder of her victory, positioned for maximum effect. From his seat, Isaiah had a perfect view of Harlan Bishop, who stood at the altar looking every inch the successful businessman and his custom tuxedo. Tall, distinguished, with streaks of silver at his temples that spoke of experience rather than age. Isaiah had to admit the man cut an impressive figure. Their eyes met briefly across the room. Harlan's mouth quirked in what might have been a smirk before he turned to speak with his best man. You actually came, a voice said beside him. Isaiah turned to find Lena's sister, Vanessa, sliding into the seat next to his. Lena was very persuasive. He replied. Vanessa studied him with something like pity. This is cruel, even for her, making you sit here and watch. I'm fine. Are you? Because you look remarkably calm for a man about to watch his wife marry someone else. Isaiah offered her a small smile. Life is full of surprises. Vanessa seemed about to say more when the music changed, signaling the ceremony was about to begin. She squeezed his arm once before moving to her assigned seat further back. The procession began. Flowery bridesmaids in champagne color gowns. Harlan's nephews as ringbearers. Then the music swelled and all heads turned toward the entrance. Lena appeared in the doorway, a vision in ivory silk. Her dress was clearly expensive. Its design simple yet striking, emphasizing her slender figure. Her dark hair was arranged in an elegant updo, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. As she began her walk down the aisle, her eyes found Isaiah's. There was triumph in her gaze. A clear message. I won. Isaiah simply nodded in acknowledgement, his expression pleasant and composed. Something flickered in Lena's eyes, perhaps disappointment at his apparent acceptance or unease at his calmness. But she continued forward. Her smile fixed firmly in place as she approached her waiting room. The officiant, a distinguished older man whom Isaiah recognized as a judge from the circuit court, no doubt another of Harlan's connections, began the ceremony with practiced solemnity. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join Harlan and Lena in matrimony. Isaiah listened, his face betraying nothing of the anticipation building within him. Cyrus had slipped in at the last moment, taking a seat near the back. Kara was positioned by the side entrance, elegant in a blue dress that would not stand out in the crowd. Cliff Morrison waited in a room adjacent to the ballroom, ready with his evidence. Everything was in place. The ceremony progressed smoothly until the officiant reached the traditional question. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. A brief customary pause followed the words. Isaiah stood, the ballroom went silent. Heads turned, Lena's face froze in disbelief, quickly followed by fury. Harlan's expression darkened dangerously. Isaiah stepped into the aisle, his movements unhurried. "I do," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed room. He moved toward the front, stopping several feet from the couple. "Before we proceed, there are a few things that should be brought to light." "What's the meaning of this?" Harlan demanded, his composure slipping. "Security, please, Harlan," Isaiah said calmly. "Let's not make a scene. I'm simply exercising my right to speak at this juncture of the ceremony." Lena's eyes had narrowed to slits. "Say," she hissed, "what do you think you're doing?" "What you should have expected me to do," he replied softly before addressing the gathered guests. "Many of you know me as Lena's soon-to-be ex-husband. What you may not know is the nature of our separation." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "This is inappropriate," the officiant declared, clearly uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should, with respect, Your Honor." Isaiah interrupted smoothly. "I believe you'll want to hear this as well." He turned back to the guests. "Lena has portrayed our divorce as a mutual decision, a sad but amicable parting of ways. The truth is somewhat different." He gestured, and at the back of the room a screen began to lower from the ceiling. Cyrus had arranged this technical detail, ensuring everything was in working order. "What are you doing?" Lena's voice had risen, panic edging in. "Stop this right now, or I swear you'll take the children." Isaiah finished for her, loudly enough for the front rows to hear. "Yes, that was your threat, wasn't it?" The projector activated, and suddenly Lena's voice filled the ballroom. "He's loaded, Kara. All I need is a year of marriage, maybe 2. Then half of everything is mine." A video played Lena at lunch with a friend. Recorded months ago. Another clip followed. "Harlan's useful. He has the connections I need. After that, who knows?" Isaiah watched as Harlan's expression shifted from anger to shock, then to a cold, calculating fury as clip after clip played. Lena talking about him as a stepping stone, laughing about how easy he was to manipulate, discussing her plans to upgrade again after securing her financial future. This is edited," Lena protested, but her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. The evidence was too clear. Her words too specific to be fabricated. "Harlan," she turned to him desperately. "You can't believe this. It's obviously fake. Something he put together too. Is it fake?" Harlan asked coldly, stepping away from her. "Because it sounds exactly like you." The ballroom had erupted into shocked whispers. Lena's parents sat frozen in their seats. Her mother's hand pressed her mouth in dismay. "There's more," Isaiah continued, his voice still calm and controlled. He nodded to Cyrus, who approached with a folder in hand. "Financial records," he explained, handing documents to Harlan detailing how Lena has been systematically moving funds into offshore accounts that only she can access. Harlan flipped through the pages, his face growing harder with each one. "These are transfers from my personal accounts," he said slowly. "Accounts only my financial team should have access to. Your financial team, which now includes Lena's college roommate, whom she convinced you to hire last month." Isaiah pointed out that Harlan's head snapped up. Realization dawning. "She's been planning this from the beginning." Isaiah continued. "Marry you, establish an extravagant lifestyle, divorce you within 2 years, and take half of everything plus alimony. The classic gold digger playbook executed with precision." "You bastard." Lena spat at Isaiah, her carefully cultivated image crumbling before the assembled guests. "You think you're so clever. What about the children? I'll still take them from you." "No, you won't." Isaiah interrupted, his voice finally showing emotion, cold, implacable certainty. "Judge Reynolds awarded me temporary full custody yesterday." He pulled the court order from his inside pocket. "You've been served, Lena." The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath as Lena stared at the document in disbelief. "On what grounds?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Parental neglect. Abandonment. The judge was particularly interested in the recordings of you stating that the children were merely pawns to be used against me." Isaiah's eyes hardened. "Did you really think I wouldn't protect them?" Lena lunged forward, her perfectly manicured hand raised to strike him. But Harlan caught her arm enough. He growled, "You've humiliated yourself and me quite enough." She wrenched away from him. "You can't possibly believe this." "The evidence speaks for itself," Harlan replied coldly, "and frankly, it confirms had for some time. These people," Lena gestured wildly at Isaiah and Cyrus. "They've manufactured all of this to destroy us." "Us?" Harlan laughed bitterly. "There's no us anymore. There never really was there." The guests have begun to shift uncomfortably in their seats, some discreetly making their way toward the exits. No one wanted to witness this implosion of wealth and status up close. Lena looked around desperately seeking support but found none. Even her parents remained seated, unwilling to involve themselves in the spectacle their daughter had created. "This isn't over," she hissed at Isaiah. "You're right," he agreed. "It isn't." Isaiah turned to Harlan, whose face had settled into a mask of cold fury. "Mr. Bishop," Isaiah said formally, "I believe there are additional matters that might interest you." Harlan studied him with narrowed eyes. "You've made your point, Caldwell. Don't push your luck. This isn't about Lena anymore," Isaiah replied. "This is about your financial practices that have raised some significant red flags." The remaining guests, sensing that the drama was far from over, had stopped their exodus. The wealthy and powerful among them, Harlan's peers and business associates, exchanged concerned glances. Isaiah nodded to Cyrus, who opened another folder. "These documents," Cyrus began, his lawyer's voice precise and authoritative, "show a pattern of financial irregularities in Harlan Bishop developments over the past 5 years. "This is absurd," Harlan scoffed. "My financial records are impeccable." "Your public ones certainly," Cyrus agreed. "But what about the secondary books? The ones kept on servers in the Cayman Islands?" A murmur ran through the remaining crowd. Several of Harlan's business associates shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what you're talking about," Harlan said, but there was a new tension in his voice. "I think you do." Isaiah gestured toward the side door where Cliff Morrison now stood. "Your former partner certainly does." Harlan's face drained of color as he recognized Morrison. "What's he doing here?" Morrison stepped forward, carrying his own set of documents. "Hello, Harlan. It's been a while. This is a private event," Harlan snapped. Security, 2 men in dark suits, moved forward. But Isaiah spoke quickly. "I wouldn't," he advised. "Not unless you want to add witness intimidation to the charges already being considered." Charges? One of Harlan's business associates, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, stepped forward. "What charges?" Morrison handed the man a document. "Tax evasion for starters. Falsification of permit applications. Bribing city officials." The man scanned the page, then looked at Harlan with growing alarm. "Is this true? These properties were jointly invested in half of them." "It's nonsense," Harlan insisted, but sweat had begun to bead on his forehead. "Obviously fabricated by disgruntled ex-employee." "Partner," Morrison corrected. "I was your partner until you forced me out. And I've spent the last 3 years documenting everything." Several other businessmen had gathered around, examining the documents with increasing concern. "The Jensen Tower permits," one said, jabbing a finger at a particular page. "You told us those were approved through proper channels." "They were," Harlan insisted. "After you paid Commissioner Williams $250,000, Morrison countered. "I have the wire transfers to prove it." The mood in the room had shifted dramatically. What had begun as embarrassment for Lena had transformed into something much more serious for Harlan. His business associates, many of them with their own reputations and fortunes at stake, were now regarding him with suspicion and alarm. "These are serious allegations," the silver-haired man said carefully. "If even half of them are true, they can't be proven." Harlan insisted, but his confidence was visibly cracking. "Actually," Isaiah interjected, "they already have been. The SEC has received copies of all this documentation as of this morning, as have the FBI and the State Attorney General's office." This was a calculated bluff. The reports had been prepared, but not yet submitted. But judging by the panic that flashed across Harlan's face, the lie had hit its mark. "You're bluffing," Harlan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Isaiah met his gaze steadily. "Check your phone. I imagine your financial team is trying desperately to reach you right now." As if on cue, Harlan's phone began to vibrate in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. The color drained further from his face as he saw the cascade of urgent messages. "This is a setup," Harlan said, his voice rising. "You orchestrated all of this." "I simply exposed the truth," Isaiah replied calmly, "something you and Lena seem to have difficulty with." Harlan lunged forward suddenly, grabbing Isaiah by the lapels. "You smug bastard. You think you can come in here and destroy everything I built?" Isaiah didn't resist or pull away. He simply looked Harlan in the eye. "You did that yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows it." Security guards moved in, pulling Harlan back. The silver-haired businessman stepped between them. "Harlan, control yourself," he hissed. "This is already a disaster. Don't make it worse. You don't understand." Harlan insisted, straightening his jacket with trembling hands. He's manipulating all of you. This is revenge, pure and simple. Perhaps the man conceded. But these documents, he held up the pages Morrison had provided. These seem legitimate. And if they are, we're all at risk of being implicated. Other business associates nodded in grim agreement. We need to consult our attorneys. Another man declared. Immediately, Harlan watched in dismay as his carefully cultivated network of powerful allies began to distance themselves, both literally and figuratively. Men who had been slapping his back and calling him brother just an hour ago were now edging toward the doors. Phones already pressed to their ears as they contacted their legal teams. Lena, who had been watching the scene unfold with growing horror, approached Harlan. Harlan, we need to get out of here, she urged quietly. We can fight this later, but right now, he rounded on her with unexpected viciousness. You're part of this. You brought him into my life. That's not fair, she protested. I had no idea he would. No idea. Harlan laughed harshly. You were married to him for 15 years. You should have known what he was capable of. I never thought he'd fight back like this. Lena admitted a grudging respect in her voice as she glanced at Isaiah. Well, congratulations, Harlan sneered. Your ex-husband just destroyed both our lives. Not both. Isaiah corrected. Still perfectly composed. Lena walks away with nothing but her own shame. You, on the other hand, he gestured to the steadily emptying ballroom where Harlan's business empire was effectively crumbling in real time. This isn't over. Harlan threatened, echoing Lena's earlier words. I believe it is. Isaiah replied, but by all means continue to make threats. It only strengthens the case against you. Harlan stepped back, suddenly aware of the precarious position he was in. His eyes darted around the room, calculating, assessing. Isaiah could almost see the gears turning as Harlan realized just how thoroughly he had been outmaneuvered. I underestimated you. Harlan finally said, his voice low, a common mistake Isaiah acknowledged. One Lena made as well. Lena glared at him. Years of accumulated resentment, finally surfacing. You were always so passive, so accommodating. When did you become this? This calculating? I was always calculating. Isaiah replied simply, I just never had a reason to use it against anyone until you threatened my children. The mention of the children seemed to trigger something in Lena. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. The custody ruling, she said, is that real? Completely. Cyrus interjected, stepping forward. Judge Reynolds was most concerned about your statement recorded. I might add that you would use the children as leverage against Isaiah. I never said that, Lena protested automatically. We have the recording. Cyrus replied mildly. Along with several others documenting your progressive disinterest in actual parenting over the past year, Lena turned to Isaiah, a hint of desperation breaking through her anger. Then my children too. They are, Isaiah agreed, his voice softening slightly. And if you had ever treated them as anything other than accessories or weapons, we wouldn't be here. Before Lena could respond, a commotion at the main entrance drew everyone's attention. The double doors of the ballroom swung open and 3 police officers entered, accompanied by a man in a gray suit who moved with the unmistakable authority of federal law enforcement. Harlan stiffened beside Lena. What now? He muttered, though the answer was written clearly on his face. The man in the suit approached, nodding briefly to Isaiah before turning to Harlan. Harlan Bishop, he inquired formally. Yes, what is this about? Harlan attempted to sound confident, but his voice wavered slightly. I'm Special Agent Parker with the FBI. We'd like to ask you some questions regarding certain financial transactions conducted through your development company. Whispers erupted among the remaining guests. This was no longer just a scandalous wedding disruption. It had escalated into something far more serious. My client will be happy to cooperate fully. A distinguished older man interjected, stepping forward. Isaiah recognized him as Thomas Brennan, one of the city's most prominent defense attorneys. However, this is hardly the appropriate venue for such a discussion. Unfortunately, we have reason to believe Mr. Bishop may be a flight risk. Agent Parker replied coolly, given the nature of the allegations and certain activities we've been monitoring. What activities? Brennan demanded. The charter flight to the Cayman Islands scheduled for tomorrow morning for one, the agent answered. The recent liquidation of several domestic assets for another. Harlan's face betrayed his shock. These were moves he had made quietly, arrangements known only to his most trusted advisors. This is absurd. Brennan blustered. My client has business interests that require international travel. There's nothing suspicious about. We have a warrant. Agent Parker interrupted, producing an official document. Mr. Bishop, please come with us. You can't do this. Harlan protested as one of the officers moved toward him. Do you have any idea who I am? Who my friends are? Yes, sir. We're aware of your connections. The agent replied impassively. Those are also under investigation. The color drained from Harlan's face as the implications sank in. His network of influence, judges, commissioners, business partners, was being dismantled. He turned to Isaiah, fury and disbelief warring in his expression. You did this. No, Isaiah replied quietly. You did this to yourself. I simply made sure you couldn't hide it anymore. As the officers led Harlan away, Lena stood frozen. The full impact of what was happening finally hitting her. Her carefully orchestrated future, the wealth, the status, the power was dissolving before her eyes. What about me? She asked, her voice small for the first time. Am I being arrested? To Agent Parker glanced at her dispassionately. Not this time, ma'am. That you may be called as a witness in the ongoing investigation. Lena's shoulders sagged with momentary relief. But Isaiah knew her well enough to see that her mind was already racing, calculating her next move, evaluating what could be salvaged from the wreckage of her plans. Lena, he said, drawing her attention back to him. There's something else you should know. Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. What now? Isaiah nodded to Cyrus, who produced another document from his briefcase. This is a copy of the custody ruling, Cyrus explained, offering it to her. You'll want to review it carefully. Lena snatched the paper, her eyes scanning the legal language rapidly. Temporary full custody to Isaiah. Visitation rights to be determined. Her voice faltered as she reached a particular paragraph. What does this mean? Evidence of parental alienation. It means, Cyrus explained calmly, that the court has found your attempts to turn the children against their father, specifically your statements that Daddy doesn't want us anymore. And Daddy doesn't love us enough to fight for us constitute emotional abuse. I never said those things to them. Lena protested. We have Ellie's testimony. Isaiah said quietly, and Rudy's drawings from his therapy sessions. The child psychologist's report was quite compelling. Lena's face paled. Therapy? You put them in therapy without consulting me. After Ellie started having nightmares about being abandoned. Yes. Isaiah replied, a hint of steel entering his voice. It was the responsible thing to do. You had no right. I had every right. Isaiah interrupted. I'm her father. While you were planning your new life, I was helping them cope with the wreckage of their old one. Something shifted in Lena's expression, perhaps the first genuine emotion beyond anger or calculation that Isaiah had seen from her in months. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered in her eyes. What happens now? She asked, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. Now, Isaiah replied, you get to experience what it feels like to have access to your children controlled by someone else. The difference is I won't use them as weapons. Your visitation will depend entirely on your behavior and their well-being. You can't keep them from me. Lena said, but the threat in her voice had been replaced by something closer to fear. I'm their mother. Yes, you are. Isaiah agreed. And if you ever start acting like one, putting their needs above your own, showing up consistently, being honest with them, you'll find me reasonable about visitation. Lena stared at him, searching for any sign of deception or cruelty in his expression. Finding none, she seemed momentarily lost. Why are you doing this? She finally asked, protecting my children. Isaiah raised an eyebrow. I would think that would be obvious. No, she shook her head impatiently. All of this, the custody hearing, the evidence against Harlan, the timing. You could have just divorced me quietly, fought for the kids in court. Why go to these lengths? Isaiah studied her for a long moment, considering how much to reveal. Finally, he decided on the unvarnished truth. Because you threatened to take my children, he said simply, and you made it clear that you would use Harlan's connections to do it. You left me no choice but to dismantle those connections. So all of this exposing Harlan's crimes, ruining both of us publicly, it was all just to protect your relationship with Ellie and Rudy. Yes, the single word hung between them, its implications slowly sinking in. Isaiah had not orchestrated this complex sequence of events out of jealousy, wounded pride, or even righteous anger, though he had felt all those things. He had done it because it was the only way to ensure his children's safety and well-being when faced with opponents who would use every advantage, fair or unfair. Lena's shoulders slumped. For the first time, she seemed to recognize the magnitude of her miscalculation. "I never thought you would fight this hard," she admitted quietly. "That was your mistake." Isaiah replied, "You saw what you wanted to see, a passive man who would accept whatever crumbs you offered. You never bothered to know who I really was." "And who is that?" She asked, something like genuine curiosity in her voice. "Someone who will do whatever is necessary to protect what matters." He held her gaze steadily. "You just never mattered enough for me to show you that side." The word struck home in a way that all the evidence and legal maneuvers had not. Lena flinched visibly. Around them, the once elegant ballroom had emptied of all but a few lingering guests and staff members beginning the cleanup process. The flowers that had seemed so perfect hours ago now appeared gaudy and excessive, their sweet scent cloying in the aftermath of destruction. "What I do now?" Lena asked. And for once, the question seemed genuine rather than calculated. "That's up to you," Isaiah replied, "but if you want any meaningful relationship with your children going forward, I'd suggest starting with honesty. They deserve that much." He turned to leave his part in this drama complete. Cyrus fell in a step beside him, Morrison following a few paces behind. "Wait," Lena called after him. Isaiah paused but didn't turn around. "Was any of it real?" she asked, her voice catching slightly. "Our marriage. Did you ever really love me?" Now he turned, regarding her thoughtfully across the distance that separated them, a distance far greater than the few yards of polished ballroom floor. "Yes," he said finally, "I loved who I thought you were." With that, he walked away, leaving Lena standing alone in the ruins of her ambitions. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm on Isaiah's face. He took a deep breath, feeling the tension of the past months beginning to dissolve. "That went even better than we planned," Cyrus remarked as they reached the parking lot. "The FBI was an unexpected bonus." Isaiah agreed. "Though I suspect some of our evidence may have found its way to them through unofficial channels." Morrison coughed discreetly. "I may have had a conversation with an old friend at the bureau last week. Purely hypothetical, of course." Isaiah nodded appreciatively. "Good initiative. What now?" Cyrus asked as they reached their respective vehicles. Now Isaiah replied with the first genuine smile either man had seen from him in months. "I go home to my children 3 days after the wedding debacle." Isaiah sat in Cyrus's office watching the news coverage on a wall-mounted television. Financial titan Harlan Bishop remains in federal custody today, the reporter announced gravely as the investigation into what authorities are calling one of the most extensive financial fraud schemes in the state's history continues to expand. The screen showed footage of Harlan being led into the courthouse, his normally immaculate appearance disrupted by the standard-issue orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. Bishop, who was arrested dramatically during his own wedding ceremony, faces multiple charges, including tax evasion, wire fraud, and bribery of public officials. The reporter continued. Sources close to the investigation indicate that several prominent city officials may also be implicated as the case unfolds. Cyrus muted the television and turned to Isaiah. "They're denying bail. Flight risk. Not surprising." Isaiah replied, "Especially with those offshore accounts we uncovered. His legal team is arguing that the evidence was obtained illegally," Cyrus noted, sliding a document across the desk. "They're claiming corporate espionage, among other things." Isaiah glanced at the filing. "Will hold up." "Not a chance. Morrison was a legitimate partner in those ventures. He had every right to access those records." Cyrus leaned back in his chair. "Besides, once the FBI got involved, they obtained their own warrants. Whatever they found independently will stand regardless. And there was plenty to find." Isaiah observed, remembering the extensive documentation Morrison had compiled. "More than even we knew," Cyrus confirmed. "The raid on his offices turned up evidence of connections to some very unsavory characters. Money laundering is now among the charges." Isaiah nodded thoughtfully. When he had begun this process, his sole focus had been neutralizing the threat to his children. The extent of Harlan's criminal activities have been an unanticipated advantage, but not his primary concern. "What about his associates?" he asked. "The ones at the wedding scrambling to distance themselves," Cyrus reported with a slight smile. It's quite something to watch these titans of industry suddenly develop amnesia about their decades-long friendships with Harlan. Self-preservation. Isaiah murmured, speaking of which Cyrus continued, his expression growing more serious. Harlan's been asking to speak with you. This caught Isaiah by surprise. Me? What? He won't say. His attorney reached out yesterday, very hush-hush. Cyrus studied him curiously. Are you going to go? Isaiah considered the question carefully. He had no desire to see Harlan again, but curiosity tugged at him. What could the man possibly want to say to him now? What do you think? He asked Cyrus. Professionally, I'd advise against it. There's nothing to gain. And he could be setting up some kind of trap of false accusation, perhaps. Cyrus paused. Personally, I think you should go. He's desperate. And desperate men sometimes reveal important truths. Isaiah nodded slowly. Set it up. The following morning, Isaiah found himself in a stark visitation room at the downtown detention center. The metal chair was uncomfortable, the fluorescent lighting harsh. He waited patiently, his expression neutral. The door buzzed and Harlan entered, is escorted by guard. The orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame, suggesting he had already lost weight in a short time since his arrest. His face was haggard, the confident facade stripped away by circumstances. You came, Harlan observed, taking the seat across from Isaiah. I wasn't sure you would. Curiosity. Isaiah replied simply. Harlan nodded as if this made perfect sense. They're giving me 20 years minimum. Did you know that? No. But it seems appropriate. A bitter smile crossed Harlan's face. Always so measured, so controlled. I underestimated that about you. Most people do, including Lena. Yes. Harlan leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. You destroyed everything I built. Years of work, connections, influence, all gone in a single afternoon. You build it on fraud and corruption. Isaiah pointed out. It was always going to fall eventually. Maybe Harlan didn't seem interested in arguing the point. But we both know this wasn't about justice for you. This was about your children. Isaiah remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. I respect that, Harlan continued, surprising him. The lengths you went to, the patience, the planning. It was impressive. I didn't come here for your approval. Isaiah said mildly. No, I imagine not. Harlan rubbed his wrists where the handcuffs had been. I asked you here because I wanted to understand something. What? How you knew? Harlan's eyes fixed on Isaiah's. Suddenly intense. About the Cayman accounts, the bribes, all of it. Morrison had access to some records. Yes, but not everything. Not the flight plans or the liquid assets. Isaiah considered the question. There is no harm in honesty now. I didn't, he admitted. I had enough to expose your relationship with Lena and some of your questionable business practices. Enough to create doubt among your associates and trigger investigations. The FBI finding the rest was fortunate timing. Harlan stared at him, then barked a short, humorless laugh. So I really did it to myself, panicked and tried to run, which only confirmed their suspicions. Essentially, and Lena, Harlan asked, his voice hardening. Did she know about any of this? I don't believe so, Isaiah replied truthfully. She was using you for your money and connections, not your criminal enterprises. Small comfort. Harlan fell silent for a moment, his gaze distant. Then he refocused on Isaiah. There's something you should know about Lena. Isaiah raised an eyebrow questioningly. She approached me first, Harlan revealed, at a charity gala last year, made it very clear she was available, interested. I later found out she'd researched me extensively, my net worth, my properties, my habits. I was a target from the beginning. Why are you telling me this? Because you should know who you were married to. Harlan replied, not that you seem to have any illusions left. I don't. Isaiah confirmed. Good. Harlan nodded as if satisfied. One more thing. The accounts she set up, there's one you might not know about, Cayman National Bank under her mother's maiden name. She transferred close to $2 million there over the past 6 months. My money. This was new information. Isaiah filed it away carefully. Again, why tell me this? Harlan's smile was cold. Because I'm in prison for a very long time, Caldwell. And I prefer not to be the only one paying for my mistakes. Isaiah understood then. This wasn't about helping him. It was about ensuring Lena didn't escape. I'll pass the information along to the appropriate authorities. He said, rising from his chair. Their conversation was clearly at an end. One last question. Harlan said, as Isaiah turned to leave, if I hadn't been crooked, if I had been legitimate, would you still have found a way to destroy me? Isaiah considered this carefully. If you had been legitimate, you wouldn't have threatened to use corrupt connections to take my children. But yes, I would have found another way to protect them. Harlan nodded slowly. I believe you would have. He leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking exhausted. Enjoy prison, Isaiah murmured as he turned to exit. That's my line, Harlan replied with a sardonic smile that didn't reach his eyes. As Isaiah left the detention center, he placed a call to Agent Parker relaying the information about Lena's hidden account. It wasn't vengeance driving him now. Simply a commitment to seeing things through to their proper conclusion. That'd be why that evening financial investigations had been expanded to include Lena Caldwell as a person of interest. The rain fell in steady sheets drumming against the windows of Isaiah's home as he reviewed documents at his desk. It had been 2 weeks since the wedding, 2 weeks of relative quiet as he focused on re-establishing stability for Ellie and Rudy. The children had adjusted remarkably well, all things considered, without the tension that had permeated the house during the last months of his marriage. They seemed more relaxed, more themselves. Ellie's nightmares had subsided. Rudy was talking more. The doorbell rang, pulling Isaiah from his thoughts. He wasn't expecting visitors, especially not in this weather. He was even less prepared for the sight that greeted him when he opened the door. Lena drenched from the rain, her expensive makeup running in dark streaks down her face. Can I come in? She asked, her voice surprisingly subdued. Isaiah hesitated, then stepped aside. Whatever this was, it was better handled privately. Lena entered, water dripping from her clothes onto the hardwood floor. She made no move to remove her coat or shoes. The children are asleep, Isaiah said quietly. She nodded, seeming relieved. I didn't come to see them. Not like this. Then why are you here? Lena ran a hand through her wet hair, pushing it back from her face. The gesture was uncharacteristically vulnerable for her. They froze my accounts, she said, finally, all of them, even the one in the Caymans. I see. Isaiah kept his expression neutral. Don't pretend you didn't know, she said, a flash of her old sharpness returning. This has your fingerprints all over it. I informed the FBI about the offshore account. Isaiah admitted what they chose to do with that information is their business. They're calling me an accomplice. Lena continued, her voice rising slightly to Harlan's crimes. They're saying I helped launder money, that I was part of his whole operation. Were you? No, the denial was vehement. I took advantage of what he offered. I didn't ask questions about where it came from. Willful ignorance isn't much of a defense, Isaiah observed. I'm not going to prison, Lena stated flatly. I can't. What would happen to Ellie and Rudy? They need their mother. Isaiah remained silent, waiting for her to reach the point of this unexpected visit. I need your help. She finally said, the words clearly difficult for her. My help? Isaiah repeated, not bothering to hide his surprise. With what exactly? You know people you have influence. She gestured vaguely. You could tell them I wasn't involved, that I didn't know about Harlan's illegal activities. Could I? Isaiah's voice was neutral. Yes, Lena's composure cracked further. You know, Mice, I'm selfish. I'm calculating. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a criminal. I wouldn't risk everything like that. Isaiah studied her carefully. In this, at least, he believed she was telling the truth. Lena was too practical to risk prison. Her schemes had always operated just within the boundaries of legality, if not morality. Please, she whispered into a shock. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean any of it. Isaiah felt an unwelcome twinge of the old connection, the history they shared. He pushed it aside firmly. What specifically didn't you mean? He asked, his voice cool. The threats about the children. She wiped at her eyes ineffectually. I would never have kept them from you. Not really. I was just angry and hurt. Isaiah interrupted, genuine anger flaring for the first time. You cheated on me for a year. You planned to leave me from the beginning. What exactly hurt you, Lena? She flinched at his tone, that you never seemed to care enough about anything. You were always so controlled. Even when I told you about Harlan, you just stood there. No passion, no fight. Isaiah shook his head slowly. You mistook control for apathy. A common error. I see that now, she admitted quietly. No one goes to the lengths you did without caring deeply. They stood in silence for a moment, the rain outside providing a steady backdrop to the tension within. Will you help me? Lena finally asked again. Isaiah considered his options carefully. Despite everything, she was still his children's mother. Her absence, especially under such circumstances, would affect them deeply. I'll speak to Agent Parker. He said finally, I'll confirm that I never saw evidence of you participating knowingly in Harlan's crimes. Relief washed over Lena's face. Thank you, but he continued, cutting her off. That's all I'll say. Because that's all I know to be true. If they find evidence suggesting otherwise, you're on your own. She nodded quickly. That's all I'm asking. Just the truth. For once, he added pointedly. Lena didn't dispute this. Instead, she glanced toward the stairs. How are they? Ellie and Rudy, they're doing well. Isaiah replied. Better than expected. Actually, do they ask about me? Sometimes. Ellie more than Rudy. Lena nodded, absorbing this information. And what do you tell them? The truth in terms they can understand that you and I aren't going to be married anymore. But that we both love them very much. Even though I've been a terrible mother, she murmured more to herself than to him. You haven't been present. Isaiah corrected. That can change if you want it to. If I avoid prison, you mean even if you don't? He said there are ways to maintain relationships. Lena visits, letters, phone calls. The question is whether you will make the effort. She looked at him with genuine curiosity. Why would you even allow that? After everything I did, because they're half you, he replied simply, and they need to know that half of themselves. Lena swallowed visibly. I don't deserve your consideration. This isn't about you. Isaiah clarified. It's about them. She nodded understanding. I should go. As she turned toward the door. She paused. One more thing. I never told them you didn't love them. I said you were busy, distracted, but I never said that. Isaiah considered confronting her with the evidence, Ellie's tearful accounts, Rudy's drawings, but decided it served no purpose now. Noted, he said simply. Lena reached for the door handle, then turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I did love you once. In the beginning, Isaiah looked at her. This woman he had shared his life with for 15 years, now reduced to a stranger seeking his mercy. I know, he said quietly. Then she was gone, back in the rain, leaving nothing but wet footprints on his floor to mark her visit. Isaiah made good on his promise. Speaking with Agent Parker the following day, he confirmed what he knew to be true, that while Lena was calculating and opportunistic, he had never seen evidence of her knowingly participating in criminal activities. Whether it would be enough remained to be seen. The investigation continued, but Lena's name appeared less frequently in news reports about the case, gradually fading from a narrative as bigger fish were caught in the expanding net. 3 days after a visit, Isaiah received formal divorce papers from Lena's new attorney, not the high-powered firm Harlan had provided, but a respectable local practice specializing in family law. The terms were reasonable, asking only for what the prenuptial agreement had outlined. No demands regarding the children beyond standard visitation rights. That it was, in its way, a white flag. Isaiah signed the papers without modification and returned them the same day. There was no satisfaction in prolonging the inevitable. A week later, he received a text message from an unknown number. Thank you. They're dropping the investigation. I'd like to see the kids this weekend. If that's all right? He responded with a simple Saturday 10 a.m. and added the number to his contacts under Lena. When Saturday came, she arrived precisely on time, bearing modest gifts for the children and a subdued demeanor that was unfamiliar but not unwelcome. She spent the day with Ellie and Rudy at the park, returned them home by the agreed-upon hour, and left without drama. It wasn't forgiveness. Isaiah reflected as he watched her drive away. It was something more practical, a new equilibrium established on clear terms and mutual understanding. Lena had finally recognized the boundaries he had always maintained, the ones she had mistaken for weakness. And in doing so, she had found her place in their reconfigured lives, not at the center as she had once been, but at the margins where she could do less damage. That it wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a sustainable one. And for his children's sake, that was enough. 6 months later, Isaiah sat on the porch of his new home, watching Ellie and Rudy play in a sprawling yard. The house was smaller than their previous one. Isaiah had sold the marital home and downsized to a charming craftsman-style house in a quiet neighborhood with excellent schools. The air was crisp, with early autumn leaves beginning to turn gold and crimson on the trees that lined the property. Isaiah had planted new ones as well, saplings that would grow as his children did, marking the years of their new life. Rudy's laughter rang out as he chased their new puppy, a golden retriever named Max, across the lawn. Ellie was perched in the branches of an old oak tree, her nose buried in a book as usual. The sight filled Isaiah with a quiet contentment that had once seemed impossible. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway drew his attention. Cara LeBlanc emerged, carrying a small gift bag. "Sorry I'm late," she called, making her way up the path. "Traffic was terrible." "No problem," Isaiah replied, standing a greeter. "We're not on any schedule today." Cara had become a regular visitor over the past months, her friendship with Isaiah deepening beyond their initial alliance of convenience. She was good with the children, patient and attentive in ways that reminded Isaiah how adult relationships should function. "How did the hearing go?" she asked, settling into the chair beside us. "Better than expected," Isaiah replied. "Lena's visitation rights are now officially unsupervised." The court was impressed with her consistency over the past 6 months. Cara raised an eyebrow. "And you're okay with that?" Isaiah nodded thoughtfully. "She's trying. The children need to see that effort acknowledged." "You're more forgiving than I would be," Cara observed. "Not forgiveness," Isaiah clarified. "Practicality. The children benefit from having a functional relationship with both parents. My feelings about Lena are irrelevant to that equation." Cara smiled slightly. "Always the rational one. It served me well." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the children play. Then Cara turned to him. "Harlan's sentencing was yesterday. She mentioned 15 years with the possibility of parole after 10. It was on the news." I heard Isaiah acknowledged. "Cliff Morrison called to tell me he testified at the sentencing hearing. Does it feel like justice?" Cara asked curiously. Isaiah considered the question. "Justice isn't really what I was after." No, he gazed out his children, safe and happy in the yard. They had come to love. "I just wanted them protected. Everything else was collateral." "You're a good father, Isaiah." Cara said softly that he accepted the compliment with a nod. "I try to be." Ellie had noticed their visitor, and it was climbing down from her tree perch. "Miss Cara," she called, jogging toward the porch. "Did you bring the fabric samples?" "I sure did," Cara replied, holding up the gift bag. "For your school project, right?" Ellie beamed. "Yes, we're making collages about our future selves." "Well, these should help. I raided the boutique sample drawer for you." As Ellie eagerly examined the collection of fabric swatches, Rudy and Max bounded up to join them, both equally muddy and enthusiastic. "Whoa there." Isaiah laughed, intercepting his son before he could leap onto the porch furniture. "Pose first, then socializing." Rudy groaned dramatically but complied, dragging himself toward the side of the house where the garden hose waited, Max trotting happily behind him. "Dad, can you miss Kara's day for dinner?" Ellie asked, already spreading her fabric samples across the porch floor. Isaiah glanced at Kara questioningly. "I'd love to," she replied, "if it's not an imposition." "Never," Isaiah assured her, though fair warning, it's Rudy's turn to pick, which means pizza is a strong possibility. "Pizza sounds perfect." Kara laughed. Later, as the four of them sat around the kitchen table, pizza boxes opened between them. Isaiah found himself struck by how natural it all felt. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by Rudy's increasingly elaborate jokes and Ellie's thoughtful observations about her latest book. This was what recovery looked like, he realized, not the absence of the past, but the creation of something new that made the past less relevant with each passing day. After dinner, while the kids cleared the table, a new household rule that had initially met with resistance but was now routine. Kara helped Isaiah dishwasher. "So," she said casually, "what's next for you?" "What do you mean?" "I mean," she clarified, "you've rebuilt your life, secured your children's future, seen justice done. What now? What does Isaiah Caldwell want for himself?" It was a question he hadn't considered in quite some time. For so long, his focus had been on protection, on survival, on ensuring his children weathered the storm of their family's dissolution. The idea of wanting something purely for himself seemed almost foreign. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "Maybe you should," Kara suggested gently. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. He checked it briefly. Lena confirming her visit the following weekend. He replied with a simple acknowledgement and set the phone aside. "Everything okay?" Kara asked. "Just Lena," he explained, "routine stuff." Kara nodded, understanding. "It's strange, isn't it? How things work out." "Strange how?" "Well, a year ago your life was imploding. Now look at your new house. Happy kids free of all the toxicity." She smiled wryly. "Meanwhile, Lena lost everything she schemed for. And Harlan is in prison. Not everything works out so neatly," Isaiah observed. "True," But in this case it did. Kara rinsed the last plate and handed it to him. Almost like karma or careful planning. Isaiah replied with a small smile. Kara laughed. That too. Once the kitchen was clean, and the children settled in the living room with a movie, Isaiah and Kara returned to the porch. The evening air had cooled, and Isaiah brought out light jackets for both of them. Thanks for staying, he said as they sat down again. It's good for the kids to have normal evenings like this. Just the kids, Kara teased lightly. Isaiah smiled. Me too, I suppose. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the last light faded from the sky, stars beginning to emerge in the clear autumn night. To answer your question from earlier, Isaiah said finally about what I want next. Kara turned to him expectantly. I think I want to build something new, he said thoughtfully. Not just a life that isn't painful, but one that's genuinely good for all of us. That sounds like a worthy goal, Kara replied. Any specific plans? Isaiah considered her question. No detailed strategies this time. He decided just possibilities. I like possibilities, she said softly at SF on cue. Ellie appeared in the doorway. Dad, the movie's starting. Are you guys coming in? We'll be right there, Isaiah promised. When Ellie had disappeared back inside, Kara stood and offered her hand to Isaiah. Shall we? He took it, allowing her to pull him to his feet, lead the way as they walked back into the warmth of the house toward the sound of his children's laughter. Isaiah reflected that this simple moment of connection and contentment was what he had been fighting for all along, not revenge. Oh, that had been sweet. Not justice, though that had been served. But this, the freedom to build a life on his own terms with people who valued him for who he truly was. So Kara asked as they settled on the couch with the children between them, "What's next?" Isaiah smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes and lightened the weight he had carried for so long. Anything I damn well please.